What are the priority areas for energy that your government is going to prioritize in order to attract investment in the energy sector?
First, we have demands outstripping supply of energy. Therefore, we have to generate energy. We have to transmit the energy. We have to deliver it where it's needed. At a saloon shop, at a farm to irrigate, at a mine, at a factory, in your home. That's our agenda. So anything that stands in the way of slowing this agenda, whether it's a law, a regulation, a policy, a regulation, a law, we will dismantle it so that we can deliver energy sufficiency and surplus. Very simple. So anything that stands in the way, if it's you, we'll put you aside. We want delivery. What we were doing in Mamba yesterday, we said we'll do it, and we did it. We raised the money, $400 million from this market, and the construction started. We went to officiate it yesterday, and 24 months' time from now, both turbines, both generators, 150 megawatts, 300 will be supplying power to the grid, into your home, into a farm, into a mine, into a factory. That's the language we want. That's the way we want to work. Different culture, delivery. That's all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir.
Otherwise, we will not be here. That the various strengths.
I think the key of a point is that we are here to provide a solution. We will not lament. The challenge is here. We acknowledge the challenge, but we believe that we have the capacity, we have the know-how to circumvent this situation, and come 2030, we should be energy sufficient.
To get things underway, Sherrill, thank you so much for that particular panel discussion, and you kind of give an overview from an African perspective, drilling down into Zambia. But I think many people in this room, and I've been nudged, to ask this question, is what are the main financial challenges for energy infrastructure projects in Africa, and how can they be navigated effectively?
So I think from an African context, if we look at utility-backed PPAs, one of the main issues is the bankability of that utility. Unfortunately, tariffs not being cost reflective have taken their toll on utilities, and so that's the biggest struggle to get those deals done. On a private power, there's definitely opportunities, but you need the regulations there. And then the other challenge that we saw there was actually in South Africa was the regulations were there for private power for a while, but it only took, once load shedding in the country got really bad before private sector got really interested in buying from IPPs directly. And that was because when you buy from an IPP directly, it gets consolidated onto your balance sheet. So the asset, the debt and the liability gets added onto your balance sheet and makes your balance sheet a bit more difficult for investors to understand. But that's also where the role of the trader now comes in and helps, because the trader now ensures that it doesn't go onto your book, because you're not the sole person buying from that trader. It also gives you flexibility in different tenors. So those are definitely some of the themes we're seeing. So the two main challenges is the bankability of off-takers and lack of regulations.
Obviously, this event is being held in Zambia, and we have Mwindwa Siakalima, who's head of Stanbic Bank. Now, Mwindwa, from your perspective, how can African countries like Zambia move away from the reliance of sovereign guarantees for PPAs and adopt more sustainable financing models? Because we know, and just like in my preamble, that has obviously been a challenge. Zambia is no exception, especially with the current credit rating.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mwelwa, for that. I think I'll start with the backdrop in terms of where we are as a country. So currently we've got a deficit of 950 megawatts, that's currently. The investment that is needed in, is it 6 years' time, to 2030, is about $7 billion to get to an amount of power production that gets to about 11 gigawatts, if you like, so 11,000 megawatts. So the people you see in front of me need to assist find that $7 billion. And is that the end of it? Or can we flip the question and say, who else can then participate in getting this $7 billion that we need to get into Zambia, into the energy sector? Now, the main issues that we then, with that backdrop, the main issues that we then see, to answer your question, is definitely we need support from the DFIs, and I'm happy we've got, support on this panel. Well, albeit not really from a DFI, but from a local pension scheme, the National Pension Scheme, on the panel, and we'll hear from Mr. Mwindwa later. But the more participation from DFIs is key to get that support. There's also, I think, a large part that then looks at how do we as entities get private, as a country actually, private investments coming through. So private investments is key in terms of moving this agenda forward. The other part of it, I think, was touched on by Sherrill earlier, which is the ensuring that we allow production of electricity to be done locally by IPPs, and as well as definitely the intermediaries that can then get power from outside, and then can be sold here. So the open access regulation, I think it's SI 40 from what we've been told today. You can go and get it. It's there at the government printers. So that then gives us another big opportunity to deepen the market in terms of how we can trade the electricity, or the electrons as they are called by Sherrill earlier, between countries, between entities. But the bankability is important in that. I think credit enhancements have to be looked at, definitely from a Zambia perspective, to make sure that we can support all these entities when government is definitely on a solid journey to get the economy into that restructured state that we are all looking forward to. And the debt restructure process definitely is well underway to get us to a place where we will see better ratings, country risk ratings for the country.
Absolutely. Now, Sunny, obviously, I know you're a firm believer of never waste a good crisis. From where you're sitting, it's a Standard Chartered Bank. What would you say are just some of the aspects that your team has obviously begun to encounter in terms of what sort of opportunities lie therein? Because I think, especially now that we're in drought disaster in the region, this does present an opportunity to maybe rethink certain things. What are your comments on that?
Fantastic. There's no question that there are a lot of opportunities. I think for us, there have been opportunities before, and there are even more opportunities now. This is one area that is so interesting, where you have a commodity that is indeed needed, required by everyone, but it's very scarce. And we always find ourselves in that situation. And we also find this very interesting situation, where if you look at, I'll just pick on maybe 3 countries in Africa today. If you look at Nigeria, you look at DRC, you look at Zambia, and you go and search the countries with the cheapest electricity in the world or in Africa, these 3 countries, you'll find them there. And you go and search on the other side, the countries with the most blackouts in Africa, again, you find the same 3 countries there. Then you say there's a problem. And that problem itself presents a great opportunity. Now, when you look at project financing, it was interesting to sit in here and just listen to so many projects that we have. And some of them, I can tell you that, my heart was feeling like, there's something wrong. If some projects, people have been on them from 1992, even up to now, and we are talking of a future COD, then you say that indeed there is a problem. Now let's look at project financing. In project financing, we have basically like 5 stakeholders there. You've got your project sponsor, and we have got a lot of project sponsors in here. We've got project lenders, and we have project lenders in this place. We've got equity investors. We have got equity investors in here. We have got now the off-takers, and we've got the contractors, and everybody is present here. Now, for this to be able to work, everyone has to play their part. From us, when we are doing an assessment, we not only do an assessment on the project sponsor, we'll do an assessment end to end. We'll look at the contractors, because because remember, when you're doing project financing, you're looking at future cash flows. So you have to ensure that there are good contractors that are going to deliver on that project, and it's not a one-year project. You have to ensure that you've got reliable off-takers that are going to not only to commit, but indeed that PPA is going to work and they're going to pay. And we have had experiences ourselves where we have got a project sponsor, they have delivered, and probably they are even delivering, but the off-taker is not paying. And then we actually go as far as assessing the off-takers. Are they able to meet these requirements? So we go and look at the PPA, and Sherrill took some time to take us into that. We look at the PPA. When we look at the PPA, we are checking in there. What are the agreements that are actually in there? For example, we have got availability charges. Are they in there? Because sometimes as a sponsor, you may be able to have an off-taker, but you have your electricity that is available, your energy is available, but the off-taker is not able to pay. You have to charge for availability, charge. There's also the output that you have to put in there as well. But there are also so many other things, a change of laws that may actually come in. What are the tariffs? So all of those are things that we do assess. But looking at where we are today, I'm saying we have got huge opportunities. The only thing I would say, is that it's not a new opportunity. These opportunities have been existing, but now with where we are seeing that even more, because now we are coming to conversations that are even dealing with the ESIA conversation that we had. Because as we know, Zambia has got one of the cleanest, energy, electricity. Over 85%, we can argue even more, is clean. And if we are now having projects like Mamba, how are we offsetting that? Because those conversations we need to have. It's not only about having it green, and we had a lot of clean energy conversations, which is very, very good, but where we have other opportunities that can accelerate us getting the energy that we need, the conversation should not only end with, oh yes, we can go this way, we should also end with where are we offsetting to ensure that we still commit and achieve our net zero commitments. Thank you.
With Sunge, obviously, you do commentary on the economy. And do fantastic analysis. Now, from your experience as Chief Risk Officer at Zanaco, just tell us about what Zanaco's experience has been, thus far, like in financing energy projects, because we do know that you are also playing. So to just give, our delegates here, like just a taste of what it actually likes, on the ground. And what are some of the challenges in financing these projects, and from a commercial bank perspective as well?
Thank you, Mwelwa, and good afternoon, everyone. So the crisis has taught us to look at risk differently, not from a loss perspective, but from a value preservation perspective. So much as there have been a number of submissions, yes, we're dealing with and grappling with 950 megawatts, and first of all, we've looked at the diversification mix, and we've also looked at the various faculties that are impacted. It's from corporates to small, medium-sized businesses. We've looked at farmers as well, because right now our farmers are worried about irrigation as well, so we do cater for them. We looked at farmers. And then we also look at the retail space as well. I mean, we can be thinking big, but what about you and me at our homes as well? Should we be thinking of getting off the grid? Should we be thinking of moving on to solar and decongest the grid so that baseload can focus more on your manufacturing, so that jobs can still, be created and all that. So we play in that space through our asset finance as well. And allow me to probably just share that I think more recently there was that groundbreaking ceremony, I think by the president in Mamba. I think we were part of it through either outright lending and facilitation of guarantees as well, to the tune of about $90 million. So you can actually see that that cake is pretty much big. Interestingly, if I take you a little trip down memory lane, I would say in the last 2 years, if you look at the sovereign conditions, the fiscal space, it's been very challenging. Ask any banker. When you're default rated, it's very, very difficult to have a financing conversation, because your sovereign premiums will always be wide, and that takes us to the cost of capital. But now that Zambia is moving on to a better position with the debt restructure completing, we can actually see that upgrades have started, and hopefully that if the whole debt stock is completed, your S&Ps will then improve Zambia's long-term issuer rating, and that should translate to affordable capital, which should also translate to funding some of our projects. So one of the challenges that we have seen is, one, sovereign risk is a big issue. And at the same time, if you look at off-takers, especially, I mean, if I generalize in Africa, I would say those off-takers that are owned, state-owned, okay? The conversation is that when you do a risk assessment, because they are owned by the state, and if the state has a poor credit rating, that then tends to transmit and make the conversation difficult. But then we've seen financial innovation, because I would say in periods where your fiscal conditions were difficult, we were still able to ride the tide with local IPPs and power utilities as well, because at the end of the day, energy is a strategic commodity. Without energy, there would be no growth. And that's the burden that banks feel, to say, look, banks are supposed to partner into this growth agenda, but then how is it that you partner? I like the aspect that CE, that Ms. Kapumpe shared around the balance sheet structure of commercial banks is such that you get depositors' funds, and usually commercial banks would be what I would call on your shorter end, okay? But then projects, CapEx commitments are longer term in nature. So that mismatch makes it slightly very difficult to lock in funds and then expect to start getting payments. And that is now where financial innovation has taken us to partner risk share agreements with the likes of your African multilaterals as well, so that you're able to spread and still make it possible, rather than say, no, we can't fund, but let us still, solution for this as well. So in a nutshell, that is what we are doing. And lastly, I'll share about our GCF accreditation. That's your Global Climate Fund, which is under the auspices of the UNFCCC, that's United Nations Forum for Climate Change as well, up to $50 million. What does that do? It allows for everyone out there with a project, well, up to $50 million. That's for green types of projects to come and access funding at Senako. Thank you.
What are the key considerations that you're making as a pension house?
Thank you very much, Mwelwa. Maybe let's start from the matching. You heard the banks have an issue of short-term and long-term. The projects are mostly long-term. That's where we have a slight advantage over the banks, because the liabilities in the pension fund are all long-term. That's why we are called pension capital. Now, that gives us a little bit more leeway than maybe our colleagues. But what we've seen is, like Mtsunga was saying, a little bit more of collaboration can start unlocking possibilities that allow maybe NAPSA to anchor a facility, but working with Zanaco and working with other banks to make sure that the instruments that are provided to the developers that allow them to execute the projects. Let me go back to NAPSA. I think from our perspective, we are owned by members, the citizens of this country. A load shedding, economic ruin means disaster and doom for them. We just have to do something. Energy insecurity is a national security risk. We all know. All the plans that our government is talking about of ramping up copper production, 3 million metric tons, is all anchored on just stable power. Without that, we have a very bleak future going forward. So over the years, NAPSA is very much interested in supporting projects in the energy sector. Over the past 4 years, over the last 4-year period, we have put in about $400 million in the energy sector. Critically, just two projects, Kafio Gold Lower, 190 million, a 20-year facility, debt facility, and the recent Mamba Energy, 200 million, 10 years. Now, we obviously look at that's not enough. You heard what Mwindwa was saying in terms of the demand or the need. The gap is just too big. All that we're doing is chipping away at the problem and not making sure that we kick the decisions down the lane and they catch up with us in future. We understand 2 projects is not even a scratch on the need for the country. So we're going in for more renewables. We had the call for proposals in the renewable sector. We received about 44 proposals. We've shortlisted to 13 that seem to fit within our bankability assessment, and we think from there we might have projects that will take us somewhere. One of the simpler criteria above that is just how close to production are you, and that is just linked with trying to solve the current problem. Like Sonny was saying, I don't think all of us here or any one of us can afford 10 more years of the current situation. The economy will be in tatters, to be ruined. We just have to start making the decisions. Now, in terms of some of the considerations that we look at, of course, it has to be a financially viable project, which is bankability. That for us, we are dealing with people's money. Some people, that's all they have. You lose that, you've just killed a large base of the population. So we go through a very rigorous process to try and assess bankability. We look at the structure that they are proposing. We look at the revenue streams, the assurance of the revenue streams. We look at how to provide security for the revenue streams so that we are assured that we'll get our money back. Without that, it becomes a very big problem for everyone. But we also maybe have the advantage that we can talk to a lot more people and bring them to the table and try to find solutions that maybe are not very evident in terms of how we now start looking at collateral or security. Some of them have been very creative, but at least we managed to get to an agreement with the borrower and the lender that we can work on this project and support each other. Because of our long-term, the nature of our liabilities, maybe just to give you a bit of context of that, the National Pension Fund has about 1 million subscribers or contributors. We only have 22,000 pensioners. The rest of that money is available for investment. Most of them are on the young side of age. So it means that a long time before we start reaching maturity for them to be paid. That gives us a little bit more leeway than our colleagues to deal with financing on a long-term perspective. So some of the considerations, again, will be that matching. It sits very well with our liabilities in that we don't need the money now. As long as we've secured the revenue stream and the project is, like Sonny was saying, who is behind the project, everyone is on their toes. We get the kind of security that we take in some of these projects go beyond the borrower. That's what we try to mitigate the risk of someone who is part of the project not executing their part of the project. Then there are other considerations that come in. social and economic impact. We know the rate of utilization or electrification in our country is quite low. It's leaving out a lot of business opportunities for those that are far away from the grid or that are not connected to the grid. Some of these projects, the solar projects that go to these rural areas, will start addressing the social aspect of that. Then, of course, we live in a global world. We have to make sure that our projects answer to the ambitions of the global economy. That's where we're going. Sustainability, making sure we don't destroy the environment is some of the issues that we have to deal with. But above all, we have to respond to a national agenda. We have only one Zambia. If this crashes, we are done. It's survival. It's not a beauty contest. Not at all. We are now hit the survival mode. If we don't address this power deficit issue, we can quickly go to I don't know our classification now on the income group, but we can go to the very last, and that will be a lot of strife for everyone. So I thought I should just put the context of NAPSA. We are open for business. Those who still want to talk to us, we receive unsolicited proposals. We look at them. There's a team behind that does an assessment to see how viable or bankable the projects are, and we make decisions going forward.
The landscape clearly is changing. From an FNB perspective, are you willing to play with a pension house? Join in. Kumbaya.
Well, is it supposed to be a trick question? Of course. Yes, indeed. And I think we obviously have been speaking about partnerships, not just on the energy sector, but many other areas that NAPSA is looking at. But I think he raised that very, very important point about the gap that they can close because of the structure of their liabilities. For the banking sector, I think maybe for a while there's been a perception that the banks are very comfortable to put money in government securities, sit back and do this very armchair banking that we're doing sitting here. That's not true. I think I can speak for Sunny, I can speak for Mwindwa, and even Mutisungi, that we're all looking to grow our businesses. And the only way we can do that sustainably is to grow the franchise of the business. So you want to grow your assets, but your assets must grow into the economy. So we want to develop the economies. That's our role. And it's a role that we want to do effectively and sustainably. But I think when you initially asked me the question, the first question, you said custodian of funds. So yes, we are custodians of people's funds, everyone sitting here. The deposits comes from the public. So how we use that money is critical, it's important. So what we are looking at, and it's great to see, I think there's been, certainly we were chatting with the DG before the session started about some of the investments they've done in the past. There's certainly been a shift, which is really well appreciated by the market. So we're now looking very much at NAPSA and other DFIs, as I'd mentioned earlier, as partners, as collaborators, to make sure that we can extend tenor of facilities that we take to the market, but also we can just extend our financing in the main to the growth of the economy, different ways, through partnerships, through innovations, as we were talking about, funding innovations. That's certainly one of those avenues that we can take.